So what I kind of got known for is a style that I developed called grime art, which is that drippy aesthetic that I would just get pop figures and pop icons and just kind of do my Warhol thing, you know, but with drips. I'm a product of the '90s, so it's like Goosebumps, all the Nickelodeon, the drips, the grime. That was my aesthetic. So I was like, all right, cool, and that kind of stuck with me, and like the style kind of developed on accident because like I was going to school for visual communications, just a fancier way of saying graphic design. And somebody left their project open, and I was like, oh, it's a picture of John Lennon, and it's like a photograph, and I just started kind of like illustrating and then just kind of putting stuff on top, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool, you know. And I think around that time when the zombie stuff were cool, so I'm like, all right, cool, drippy, not zombies, but like call it something else, grime. And I'm from San Bernardino, or I grew up in San Bernardino, and like that's just our language, you know. Like anything grimy, it's like, oh, that's grimy. It's just kind of a word, and I'm like, that's a cool word. And Grime Time 909. So it all kind of started as jokes, you know, and then just once you put a name to the art and aesthetic and you go with it, then it's something, you know. Yeah, the characters I developed, which is called Los Dumpies. I take everything off like self-deprecation, you know. It was like something that was thrown at me, like, oh, you dress dumpy, you dress ugly, and I'm like, okay, and I flipped it. I'm like, okay, we're Los Dumpies then. Like taking that, and like We Toys. That was one thing. I was painting a mural once, and some guy on a bus was just like, toy, and I'm like, I'm kind of new to just that world, so I'm like, what is that? I was asking my friend Bobby. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, he's basically calling you whack. And I'm like, we are whack, We Toys. And then just taking those and flipping those campaigns for myself, and then just, I'm the type of person that just kind of goes with it. Once I think it, I'm like, all right, cool. You'll see my sticker like on Instagram like immediately the next day. I'm like, and I just, even though it makes no sense, I just like putting it out and making sense of it, you know? It's like those stickers that I create for Instagram are like title sequences to my life. So it's just kind of like, all right, if everybody's off stories, I'm like, all right, cool, I'm gonna make a credit list roll of all the homies that are kind of doing stuff, you know. First mascot I created was the blue guy, Crimey, which is like the first character for Los Dumpies, and that was because I wanted to create like just that mascot for what I was doing at the time. He's blue, he's a person of color, he's from like outer space, he's an alien, so he's kind of like the oddball. And then like I haven't shared that really. It's like one of those things that's just been in my head, and just hopefully people get it. Like, but it was just due to the fact that I'm like, well, these kids that copy me can't copy me. Like that's me. Like, so like they can do that, but they can't. And I've seen it happen already. So it's just like, it was one of those things. It's just like, oh cool, I want less sense of identity. I want to just put it all out there. It's a funner way of expressing myself. I'm really like a fan of like the Zap comics and all the Robert Crumb and all that that stuff that they used to do, and I think it's really cool to kind of like Garfield's just been super expressing yourself in a weird way, you know. It's like I wanted to animate myself a little bit more, and so people can be more like, hey, he's funny. Like I'm always conceptualizing stuff, and like I've always been that way. I'm like, well, man, I'm like inventing stuff, or just, and then I would never sketch. So the artist never, through all this time, I'm like, it wasn't until like I was doing it that I'm like, oh, until somebody was calling me like the artist, you know. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like still not comfortable accepting that thing, because like there's a lot of people that do spend a lot of time in school, and like I don't want to disservice just throwing that word out, because it's like there's people that really know like perspective and everything, and I respect all of that. So it's like I've reverse engineered being an artist. I didn't start doing like canvases until people started asking me for them. So I'm like, oh cool, like a commission. I'm like, what's a commission? You know, it's like, what's that? And I just started making whatever I drew digitally. I would start painting, so learning acrylics and learning all the different paints and styles, and how it doesn't really match the digital and that. So it's like, but it's still its own style. So it's just like, it is what it is, and people buy it, you know. Well, they do. I think like back in 2018, that's where I kind of like the I'm tired campaign started, like the fake, like I'm tired. I started just kind of like life is a protest, and that was my protest sign. And it wasn't like I wasn't exhausted. It was more just tired of trying to explain a lot of things. Everybody's emotions and everything were out. So I'm like, there, I'm tired. I'm like, boom. And then also I'm like, I'm a product of the internet a little bit. So I was just kind of like, that was a year of, all right, I don't want to base my art off relevance. I'm like, I'm gonna focus on what me can be, you know? So it's like, that was kind of fun. And it was kind of like hard too, because like when you're just living off your phone or whatever and off engagement and you're not getting it, that's where you really get down on yourself. You're like, man, I suck. I can't do this. Like nobody cares. But I'm like, that's the point. Nobody cares. Even when you're like doing stuff that's cool, everybody really is like on their own selfish paths of like survival and stuff. So it's kind of like interesting to, once you get past that hump of like, all right, cool, now we can have fun, you know? If you're gonna be an artist, it's like, be mindful that people are watching you and they're gonna be influenced by what you say and what you do. So it's like, you know, bring morality back a little bit. Like, you know, it's like be a good person and like spread that, you know? I grew up with that mindset when I was younger. It's like, I grew up with a lot of morality and just being respectful mostly, you know? And it's like, if you can teach that, there's already so much like craziness on TV. I'm like, I'm not trying to contribute to that. So with Mas Fun, I'm like, I want to introduce something that I can watch with my future child, you know? So it's like something that we can both watch and equally be entertained. So the Mas Fun TV came right after, it was 2021 where it really started to develop. I do a lot of stuff for artists and musicians and stuff, and I meet a lot of people on this journey. And I just remember, we're all friends, so it's just like, once I started kind of, once I got my new studio through Vince, like through the Brickword, like we were just kind of like, hey, we're gonna start this thing. And at first it was just like, I'm looking for a studio, and he's like, I have space. I'm like, cool. I went to check it out. I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm like, it's gonna be like, I'm gonna put my desk there, I'm gonna do art, you know? It was not no TV show or any kind of idea at the time, and it was like, yeah, I'm gonna set this up. And I'm like, all right, cool, this is gonna be it. It's just kind of like a storage unit. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then right immediately I brought the pink paint, and I just started painting it. I'm like, well, if I'm gonna have an office, I'm gonna have a cool office, you know, a fun place to do art and not just walls and stuff. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm gonna build the world there. And he started to see that. He was like, wow, this is cool. Like, it used to be a brewery, so it's just like, oh, this is awesome, you know? So I started changing it up, pizza there and all this stuff, and just building all the characters. And he's like, oh, these are cool characters. He's kind of like, and I started explaining that world a little bit. So you kind of have, when you create stuff, you have to like draw it and then look at it all the time, you know? So it helps to build a little Disneyland or whatever for yourself. And once I started inviting friends over, he's like, hey, these talks you're having are really interesting. And it's like, oh, it's just how we talk, you know? And it's just like, started just one camera and then brought another camera, and they're like, all right, cool. And then it just lived there. He's like, hey, Mas Fun, like, that's your thing. It's like Mas Fun TV. And then that's where it kind of snowballed into that. And I was like, and having somebody else believe in it, like, really kind of pushed me to kind of like do it, you know? I was like, all right, cool. It's like, if this dude really believes what I'm doing, then I'm like, and I'm still here, I'm like, I'm gonna go for it. And he's been helping me like produce this show and to what it is now, which is still nothing, you know? It's still like kind of it's just my imagination, like calmed ego almost. It was like just a place to just film and do this stuff. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I don't know what it's doing, but it's kind of cultivating at this point. So it's just, the people I do bring and invite over are like really interesting. So I'm like, I want to preserve this. I want to like, I am super aware that we're walking amongst the next Hendrixes and like Jim Morrisons and all these talented people, you know, and that's what paying attention to the community around me is, you know. I think just being a part of Riverside and experiencing the art walks firsthand, it's super inspiring, because a lot of kids and up and coming people are able to meet and like network, because this is a great networking event. And for the most part, it's just like, cool, cool. We all sell stuff, and that's fine. But it's like that's not the point. I think the bigger point is just kind of seeing all your peers and growing with them and going to their art shows and discussing art and what art can be, you know, because people are like, things don't happen in Riverside. I'm like, well, we're at the age now that we can make stuff happen, you know. We're able to kind of like talk to the right people to kind of like make these things happen. And I think Riverside's cool because there's a lot of untapped resources that people aren't really looking into, that the person that you might have to meet, you'll most likely end up meeting them at an Artswalk or some art event that happens out here, you know.
How did that get started, like your collaboration with Pax?
Fan art.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was the Tumblr. Again, that was a powerful tool. I just utilized it properly, and I just made fan art. And one of the art directors from the thing saw it, emailed me, said, "Hey, can I buy this? Can we use this? Can we license it?" I'm like, "Yeah, sick. Yeah, of course." And people assume I get free paps, but I don't. I still pay for it. That's
it's like
it's cheap enough already, guys. Like, come on. No, but that's it. It was just through fan art. It was just, if you're a fan of that artist or that celebrity and you really want to work with them, there's ways of just putting yourself out there and just genuinely do something, you know. Don't be gimmicky. Don't have the right intentions when you create something, and have a vision, you know, like, because I kind of create these weird phony campaigns in my head. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, I'm gonna conceptualize all this stuff, and it's just in my head. So it's just like, oh, it goes, because it might happen, you know. Like, that's how the baker stuff happened. Somebody's always paying attention, and then they reached out and then did some artwork for bakers, and that's pretty cool for me because it was something that's an untapped resource that's here in the IE, you know. So it's like cool. Like, I got to visit their corporate, their HQ, and like tour their facility and talk about hopefully some future stuff, and that's cool to me, you know, because I started seeing the McDonald's stuff and the art stuff. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. Like, there's bakers here, like seems like they might want to do stuff, and just reaching out. And then the new show that came out with Back to No Future, which is Oofalandia as a world, is something I created to kind of like escape from doing the same old stuff with art, you know. It's how you make art not boring. It's by always constantly like reinventing yourself in fun different ways. Oofalandia was like a fun way of just not thinking about art so much. It's kind of like my whole motto there is like less art, more fun, because it's like, for me, like the grime style became like almost like my job. So art becomes their job, and it's like, man, business isn't always like fun, you know. It's kind of like once you make it a business, it's just like you're just like, I gotta finish this work, I gotta do that, but like, where's that fun time, you know? Where's that like, oh, like that decompression, you know? We're all kind of like dragons trying to blow steam all the time, you know. And it's just like, if you don't get that, like, I don't like work out, I don't have that outlet, you know, because I'm so busy having to work, that I create that little world, that funner oofus, you know, like to create stuff like that. I've always had that mentality where it's like, cool, it's like we're used to having nothing, so let's build on the nothings we have. And so that's what Oofalandia is, you know. It's something out of nothing. It's just like, it's all made out of like repurposed trash and like just whatever materials and stuff we have. It's like, all right, cool, what do you vision, you know? And it's like, that's my nice escape. And so I think right now Riverside's a cool place to kind of like realize that stuff is happening here, and that we have a lot of creative control right now, and I think it's a cool place to experiment and try these things out and get a instant reaction, you know. I like the pop-up at Urge at Paint Sugar Gallery. It's been like, what, 3 years in the making. It's like they get so booked, and I'm like, all right, cool. It's like, and it just came up, you know, and it's like, all right, just did it really quick with everything I already had. So it's like, what once would have been a stressful situation, this one was more like, all right, cool, I already know where everything's gonna go, you know. If I were to give myself advice, no, that's kind of tough. I don't know, I would tell myself, I don't know how I would warn myself to jump into this, because it's like a lot of conditioning, and like you're gonna fall a lot. Just be prepared and strong, and be open to opportunities. You know, it's just, I don't know if I'd be the best person to give myself advice. You know, I think they're just super. I think there is no advice. It's just everything is so unknown, and there is no preparing for this journey. It's just, you're just kind of in this path, and you don't know where you're gonna end up. So it's just like, I don't. That's why school is always trips me out, because I'm like, how do people just know that you go to school, you do this, and that's what you're gonna be? I'm like, I'm living life currently, and I'm like, it hasn't worked out that way. You know, it's like expectations, all the root of all evil, and I just don't expect much, you know. So I'm just kind of like, hey man, I would just encourage him to just keep smiling and like just have fun, you know. Less art, more fun. That's my motto right now, you know. I think that would be like, just don't get butthurt, because like things will happen in your life, and you just don't get upset about it. It's just, you know, just keep skateboarding, keep just having fun, you know. Don't focus on these labels so much, for the most part.
It's a wrap.
Not too cringy, not too wild.
Freaking Richie. Thank you, buddy.
You're like, oh, I wanted to learn about this guy, but I know less.
Now I'm even more confused as to
Yeah.
who he is.
That's what I do.